Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
Yes, you are.
And this episode of the Non-Essential Podcast is brought to you by the creepy guy hiding in your bushes.
Which is us.
We record there sometimes.
We see what you do,
yeah,
Joe.
That's fucked up, you know? Well, we're doing's wrong. What you're doing's wronger.
Wronger. Which is why we dig watching it. Yeah.
They might be creeping. They're definitely fapping. They're creepy guys in bushes.
Yeah, we put the creep in creepypastas.
Yeah, another week. If you haven't listened to the show, we tell each other stories, and they can be about anything. Anything. Well, they're usually about like two things. Yeah. It's like creepypastas and serial killers. That's all I'm into anymore. It's like how
a lot of overlap there too, but
yeah, it's like you sometimes like you read stories about like old people and how like they're living like improbably long, and then when they're asked about like what their secret is, it's like, oh, no secret, I just eat peanut butter and bacon, and that's all they do.
The number of times I've like seen them interview somebody that's like 110 years old, and they're like, my secret is I drink one Coca-Cola a day, and it's like, I guarantee that's not what did it. Yeah. but whatever.
But it's like the secret is they're not that married to life, so they don't stress that much.
Right.
It would be funny if we found out like that one Coca-Cola, like if they just cut that out, they would live till like 500.
Or Coca-Cola hears the interview and they're like, I hate that fucker. They discontinue Coke
You would actually be in the shape of a 30-year-old person if you just not drink Coca-Cola anymore.
Coca-Cola, right. I know. Imagine if they're 108 years old and they've drank one Coca-Cola every day since, because it's always like, I've had one Coca-Cola every day since I was 6, and they invented it. And it's like, you count how many Coca-Colas that is. It's like, fuck, you should be 800 years old.
I even drank the new Coke, even though I hated that shit.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of hating shit that you drink, did you hear about, like, there's some guy suing the makers of, like, Fireball because there's Fireball whiskey, and then there's, like, these little, like, 99-cent, like, you've probably seen them, the plastic, like, bottles that are at checkouts at gas stations. I don't know, everybody's liquor laws are different, but, yeah, but apparently the 99-cent ones aren't whiskey, they're just, like, they're alcohol and they're cinnamon flavored, but they're not whiskey. So they're trying to sue him for that. It's like, well, I'm sorry to inform you of this, but if you're drinking the Fireball whiskey, it's also not whiskey. Like, you clearly have no taste in liquor. So what does it fucking matter? Like, it could be cinnamon.
I was going to say, like, you know, if it's alcoholic, I don't totally give a shit. But like, you know, if you want to just do this as a publicity stunt to trash Fireball, I'm all for that too. Yeah. Because at some point it would be easier to just make fucking whiskey.
Well, but that's the thing is they're not, because the full-size bottles are technically whiskey by whatever fucking stupid standards.
Is whiskey just determined by a like measurement?
It's what it's made of and what percentage of, and I don't remember the specifics. That's why you get the people, I piss a lot of people off when I say, like, because everybody's like, I'm a bourbon guy, I'm a whiskey guy, and I'm like, they're the same fucking thing. And they're like, oh, no, they're not. And it's like, they're
Fireball in the little bottles, is that just like the shit that's spilled on the floor? And they apparently it's like squeeze it out of the mop?
It's apparently a malt liquor instead of whiskey. It's like a cinnamon flavored malt liquor. And like I said, the point is, if they're both alcoholic and they both taste like cinnamon toothpaste, what's it fucking matter what it's classified as? And it's not like the little bottles say whiskey. It's not false advertisement. They say Fireball cinnamon flavored alcohol or something.
So
or
like, and Fireball's dog shit anyway. Like,
yes.
Like, I, in my prime days, in my pro days of drinking, which was like 15, a friend of mine like wanted to like soak gummy bears in it, like cinnamon gummy bears, and that was fucking horrific. It was terrible.
Yeah,
and I don't know what we thought would happen, like they would fucking like get along, but like it didn't work.
Well, that's the thing. I know that if people, and I never really did it, but you can do gummy bears or Skittles or Lifesavers or whatever in vodka and make, flavored vodka. Or you can spend the exact same amount of money as a regular bottle of vodka and just buy a flavored bottle of vodka because it's all the same cost, and it's like $6 a bottle because vodka's cheap. But yeah, I don't know. Like the kind of stuff, like I say, if you're into Fireball, more power to you. But it's not like you're into some like classy ass shit where it's like, I just imagine some guy that was like sitting around the bar bragging about how he's a whiskey drinker and he drinks those $1 bottles of Fireball, and then a drunk ass smart ass buddy is like, that's not actual whiskey, and he's like, oh no, my pride's hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, man, you don't have any pride if you're proudly proclaiming you're a Fireball drinker.
I don't know. Like tastes definitely evolve, but yeah, I would not say like I'm proud of anything I drink. Like
no,
the fact that I'm drinking is
a terrible thing for you.
I don't have pride. Like
right. You drink because a small part of you is suicidal. That's the only reason to drink.
Pretty fuck, you nailed it. Damn. Same reason I do this show. But yes, we do have a show today, and today I have a real topic. This is actually the most notes I've put into a show, I think, since we've started.
Well, good. I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about Rocky, because I finally watched that.
Yeah, I saw that. And then I saw, I saw your tweet afterwards with like Rocky 2, where you're like, it's good they're doing the same plot. And I'm like,
no, not even the same plot. It's they literally, I said bold move, like the last 10 minutes of their first Rocky movie, they literally replay for the beginning of Rocky 2. And I get like a recap or something, but no, they just take the 10 minutes of film and splice it onto the beginning of Rocky 2. And it's like, and then I guess at the time, because there was probably a pretty good gap between Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, I watched them back to back. So I'm just like, what the fuck is this shit? I just saw this.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyway. You know what? If Star Wars can do a fucking 10-minute scrolling screen with every movie.
That's true.
We'll give Rocky the recap.
So, no, I just wanted to bring up that I finally watched the movie that everybody says is great that came out 40 fucking years ago. And I'm like, hey, it's actually kind of good. Like, it's weird that it's good because there's a lot of like any individual part of it is awful, and then you get to the end, you're like, that was an awesome movie.
It's like, it was definitely a time and a place sort of flick, but I feel like I don't know, like there's room in the world for that kind of cliche underdog story.
It's weird because I had only ever seen the way post-Rocky Sylvester Stallone stuff, because he was big in the 90s. I've seen plenty of stuff with him in it, but it was weird to like actually see a Stallone movie and be like, he actually was kind of likable at one point. Weird. Like, I don't know what happened. Not that I dislike him, but he just turned into this like alleged, you can't like inaudible person. Right. And like he has that in Rocky, but like you can still understand him. It's just like, oh, it's just a weird accent. And like the guy's like a little slow. Like I never realized that Rocky's actually supposed to be like this kind of dumb, like lovable. But
what's fun is I did that impression in my Audacity file for the first time, peaked the audio file on the lower scale. Like I've never had that happen before. That's amazing.
So anyway, I don't want to detract from your master class in notes, but I just had to point out that I'm finally becoming cultured.
I mean, hey, I can't give you shit. My brother hasn't seen Goodfellas, and he's almost proud of it.
At this point,
I want to.
And it's funny because I act
shit out of him.
I act the same way about stuff, but it does piss me off that he hasn't seen that, because I hadn't seen it until I was like 34, and then it was like, hey, this is one of the. I rank it in like my top 5 movies ever made.
To me, it's like, I just don't know how that's possible, because it was like, there was like a solid year on like on AMC where they played it 5 times a day.
Yeah, they do that too. Yeah, you're not. It's funny because you say something like that, and normally you're used to people being like exaggeration. No, they'll do that where it'll play the movie back to back to back to back.
They'll be like, hey, it's Mob Week, but some of these movies suck, so we'll play like 3 of them and then just do Goodfellas and Godfather.
Right.
But yeah, let's get into this, because it probably won't.
Sounds long.
It probably won't be that long. Well,
good. Then I can get into my Rocky 2 critique afterwards.
Steve's fucking movie reviews for movies everybody's already seen.
I just watched The Maltese Falcon, and that movie's literally almost 100 years old. And it sucks. Yeah. I don't get why it's famous, but...
Because it's a movie.
Anyway, go ahead.
So, Cary and Stephen Stayner are brothers born in Merced, California. Cary was born in 1961, and Stephen was born 4 years later. They also had 3 sisters.
I don't know why I thought you were about to say they also had 3 kids.
3 kids together, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they popped out of their head like fucking Olympic gods. On December 4th, 1972, Stephen disappeared. He was 7 at the time. The whole town searched, but nobody really knew what had happened. They had a rough idea of what street he was last seen on, but there were no further leads. Over the next few years, the family would grieve the loss of their son. Cary, understandably, probably had some conflicted feelings over those 7 years. During the initial period of searching, childhood friends noted that Cary seemed to be kind of ashamed almost, that this had happened and he wasn't there to protect his little brother. But Cary would report later in life that he also kind of felt neglected by his parents during all this. As they struggled.
I mean, I get it because you're a kid, but it'd be like, they're not paying attention to me.
Yeah, but it's it sounds selfish, but
no, but I
he
get
was
it,
11,
you're a kid.
you know?
Yeah, no.
And it's no
I said,
matter
totally
what's going on,
it's weird.
Your kid needs their parents,
attention.
you know?
Yeah.
He was still a kid, and, so I can understand a parent, just how crippling that grief could be. But it also has a really tragic domino effect on the rest of the family.
Yeah, and I think what happened, because it's probably pretty common, but it's probably 50-50, because as a parent, you either get consumed by your missing kid, or you get really, really clingy with the ones that are still there because you're, whatever. So it sounds like this one is just the other way. And I understand both. I'll joke about it because I'm an asshole and that's what the show's about. But totally get all those situations. There's no really right way to handle some kind of grief like that.
Yeah. And to be fair, I didn't mean to do this, but these initial notes, I kind of paint Cary as sympathetic. He's not. So go ahead and shit on him all you want.
Okay.
And I should say this now. I should have said it at the beginning. Sexual assault, murder, all these things are talked about in this story. If that's
not in relation to this specific event, you just bring them up randomly.
Yeah. Speaking of a crime, no. So if that might be triggering for you. Again, 200 episodes. Don't know how you made it this far with us, but I appreciate it. We'll try to do better. So Cary would also claim around this time his uncle molested him, but there's all we have is his word on that.
Which again too, I know you, I think I might know this story. I think I might have heard it, but I'll let you go there because I don't know for sure.
It's kind of two stories together. So.
But it always feels kind of crappy saying all we have is their word, because you know how much molestation gets looked the other way because they're oh, it's just a kid, it's just their word. But I get what you mean. It doesn't sound like the rest of the family was suspicious.
Yeah. And then 7 years after his disappearance, Stephen appeared in a police station on the night of March 1st, 1980, with a 5-year-old boy named Timmy White with him. And Cary beat the shit out of him.
No. You son of a bitch. I finally had all the attention. Okay, this isn't the story I thought it was, so cool.
It might be.
I don't know what.
Like I said, this is the story of stories of two brothers.
Yes.
So Stephen told the world what had happened to him. He had been approached by a man named Irving Edward Murphy, who was passing out gospel tracts to other kids outside of school.
Hard-hitting gospel tracts.
Yeah. I'm spitting rhymes for the Lord. No. So he was like handing the shit out to kids in front of school, I think. Murphy asked Stephen if his mother would be willing to make an item donation to the church. Stephen said she probably would, and Murphy offered to drive Stephen home. At this point, a white Buick pulled up that was driven by Kenneth Parnell. Parnell had manipulated the simple-minded Murphy into thinking that he was running an actual ministry, but he was actually just using Murphy as kind of a mule to kidnap boys.
Cool. Cool. So it's kind of like Of Mice and Men, except it's Of Mice and Boys.
It is. Parnell's a piece of shit, and no part of this story is going to make you feel better about him. Parnell drove a terrified Stephen to a cabin that, kind of tragically was only actually a few hundred feet away from his grandfather's house. During the first week, Parnell told a terrified, naive Stephen that he had legal custody over him now because his parents didn't want him anymore.
Because finders keepers. He's a kid. That's all. They think that finders keepers is law. It's like, God.
Well, he told him, like, yeah, your parents don't want you anymore. You're mine now. And, like, fucking little kid. You don't know. I'll spare you the disgusting details of what a piece of shit like Parnell did with children. But over that time, it was kind of a weird, like, we've heard a lot of stories about, like, child abusers. This was a very weird situation where he actually did kind of adopt Stephen, and he moved Stephen around frequently over the years, pretending to be his father, when actually he's a fucking tormentor and a monster. But over those years, Stephen actually had, like, he wasn't kept in a cage or any, like, he had a level of freedom where he could kind of come and go as he pleased, like a normal kid. Parnell would take jobs that often required him to travel and would leave Stephen alone for long periods of time.
See, that's so weird to me because you know how illegal the thing is that you're doing, and then just trust that it'll work out.
Well, it's something about, like, the manipulative hold he had over him.
Yeah. But it's not even that. Like, you'd think, like, because it sounds like, at least for a part of this, they were in the same area where the kid was taken from. So it would just be like, well, I might have him convinced that I'm his legal dad, but what happens when he runs into somebody that knows him and knows he's missing? Like, yeah.
To be fair, I think, like, he did kind of keep him out of the town of Merced, but they did move around a lot, it said. Because when he does return, he returns to a different town.
And how is the older brother was 11 when he went missing? So you said this kid was like 2 or 3 years younger?
He was 4 years younger, so he was 7.
Okay, so he would have been like 7, yeah. So that's, young enough too that they're pretty...
Yeah, like Stephen later noted, these abusive situations are, for the vast majority, mental ones. So Stephen, when he was an adult, reflected on it and said there were a lot of times he could have just walked out the door, but he had no plan or idea of what to do once he did. Like,
especially if you're convinced that your parents don't. It's like, where are you walking out to?
Yeah, and like you don't really have a grasp of your actual location in relation to where you started. And after years, it just sort of builds up to like, that's your life now. My cat doesn't want to hear the story. She just lost her mind and sprinted out. Stephen also noted that a woman named Barbara Matthias, who lived with them, also raped him when he was about 9. Supposedly, she would also try to help Parnell lure other boys But she would never be arrested for her part in this.
Isn't it I mean, I think a part of most of us wants to think that this stuff happens, but it's not common. It's like it can happen, but, what are the chances? Clearly, they're good enough that these people find each other, and then, like, there's two child rapists that are just like, oh, like, how do you even meet another? Like,
yeah, like
you're just sitting around watching Netflix one day. You're like, you know what? I really like raping kids. Me too.
It's kind of crazy because, like, you can kind of see how people like these monsters connect like that over the internet and shit. Because you could find subgroups of people,
right?
People
you're specifically
online.
seeking it out, right? But like for this in the 80s or 70s, I forget, kind of around there, 80. 79, you said he was, I don't know, around there. Yeah, there was no internet, like, subgroup for these people to meet. So they're still common enough that you can just, like, in the wild, meet somebody that's just, like, maybe they weren't into it, but they're down with it as soon as you're like, hey, do you want to join me in this? They're like, yeah. That sounds, like, it's mind-blowing to me.
And if you weren't, like, into it yourself, you got a guy like Murphy who's just easily misled, and you can get him to do whatever you want anyway.
Right.
As Stephen got older and entered puberty, Parnell, like most of these child predators do, loses interest and starts looking for younger children to bring in. And he wanted Stephen to help him in kidnapping the new children, but every time he tried to use Stephen as sort of bait, this never worked out. Parnell thought Stephen was just an idiot, but Stephen hadn't, in all of this trauma, he hadn't lost his moral compass about what was happening to him. And he noted that, like, he sabotaged all those attempts. Like, he wasn't going to help this guy get more kids.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Especially since there's usually an element of fear for your safety if you don't go along with the abuser. So it takes a lot to like maintain that.
Yeah. Then on February 14th, 1980, Parnell and a teenage friend of Stephen's named Randall Sean Poorman. I don't know why I emphasize it like it's Poorman, but it's spelled like poor man.
Poor man.
Came home with the young kid, Timmy White. Motivated by Timmy's clear distress, Stephen was determined to get the boy out, even though he didn't have a plan still. And it's kind of interesting how somebody else can motivate you to take an action you wouldn't take for yourself. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's like...
Yeah, unless you pull, like, some rug flippy trick like I like to do. Shows that the Stephen kid, like, again, it's like a common element when you're the victim is there's usually I kind of deserve this or whatever. And then, so I could see that, and then you see somebody else happening to it, and you still haven't lost compassion to the point where, because that happens a lot, and that's what we see it as a cycle. And we've covered that with serial killers, where they tend to be people that were abused, and then instead of having that compassion, they turn it around and ramp it up a notch. So for him to be like, no, I can't watch this happen to somebody else, that's something.
So when Parnell left for work, he was doing a night shift security job at the time. Stephen took Timmy White and hitchhiked to Ukiah. I don't know how to say it, but it's a town in California. It was Timmy's hometown. When they couldn't find Timmy's home, Stephen took him to the police station. The next day, Parnell was arrested for abducting both boys. In 1981, he was tried and convicted of kidnapping them both in 2 separate trials. The punishment for taking 7 years of a child's life away from him? 7 years.
Eye for an eye.
And Parnell was paroled after 5.
God bless America.
It's
I'm sure he was
disgusting.
Reformed, though.
I'm sure, yeah.
A character trait such as child abduction and rape and abuse is something that prison tends to cure.
Yeah. Like, I I was watching a serial killer documentary the other night that was about this couple in Canada, and like the woman made a deal where she was like kind of saying that like, oh, I was battered by him and I had to do what he said. And so the prosecution made a deal that like she would do 12 years for their murders and he would do life. And then they like searched their home and found videotapes of her partaking in the murders and all of it. And she was just as much a part of it as he was. And they still gave her the deal. And like,
and I wouldn't be shocked if she got out and murdered more people.
And she's out. And like, I'm realizing this show is like, I was always pretty like anti capital punishment and like all about reform. But the more I dig into this shit, the more I'm like, not that I'm for the death penalty, but I'm like, why the fuck is she out? Don't let her out. And with this Parnell guy, I'm like, fuck him. He should be away for life.
Yeah, well, the problem is our idea of reform is just lock them up for a while, don't do physically anything to make them better, and then just assume they learned their lesson. Reform.
It's just like, you know, again, that's a child. Like, that is 7 years of his life he's never going to get back. And Parnell didn't even lose that. Like, he only had to do 5. It's fucking insane to me. Murphy, for his role in the kidnappings, was convicted on lesser charges. He swore, like, he didn't know anything about them, that he thought it was an actual, just, like, fucking cheap hick ministry. Stephen, for his part, said he remembered Murphy as being really kind to him during the first week of captivity that he was around, and he believed that Murphy was as much of a victim and was as manipulated the same as him and Timmy. You know, but who's to say? So while Parnell got off way too fucking easy, Stephen was finally returned home. And his case did prompt California lawmakers to change state laws to allow consecutive prison terms in similar abduction cases. Just didn't do any good now.
Right. It's like, oh, we've identified a gaping hole in the system. Let's fix that right up.
But for breaking out and bringing Timmy home, Stephen came back to Merced a hero. And there's a statue of him in the town to this day.
Cary pisses on every night. He's like, you came back.
So yeah, if Cary didn't feel kind of pushed to the side due to like what happened to his brother before, imagine he comes back and he's the fucking hero of the town and everybody knows him. You know, like, again, it's not, it is a bad element of humanity, and it's petty, and you shouldn't be fixated on things like this, but it's understandable, you know, if you feel like you've been neglected the entire time. Later in life, Stephen had some obvious trauma. His father apparently declared that Stephen didn't need counseling because he would fucking know, right? One of the Stayners sisters noted that Stephen tried to get on with his life, but he was pretty messed up. He dropped out of school due to being bullied for his ordeal, and he began to drink frequently. He got kicked out of the family home, and his relationship with his dad never really recovered. Stephen would get married to 17-year-old Jody Edmondson and would have 2 children with her. He worked with the child abduction groups, spoke to children about personal safety, and told his story. By 1989, he was working at a pizza shop and just joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Unfortunately, Stephen would die that year due to fatal head injuries when his motorcycle collided with a car in a hit-and-run accident. 500 people attended his funeral. Timmy White, now 14 years old, was a pallbearer.
So
let's talk about the other brother.
I kind of had a feeling you were going there.
It's like I said, it's the tale of 2 stories.
Charles Dickens' lesser known novel, The Tale of Two Stories.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
it was the best of stories.
It was the best of Stayner. It was the worst of Stayner.
I say it seems like it's the worst of stories. It was the worster of stories, is my guess. But anyway, continue. 2
years after Stephen's death, Cary reportedly tried to commit suicide. He survived this and pretty much continued the slow spiral that his adulthood had become. He was arrested for marijuana and methamphetamine in 1997. Now, think about meth like I do often. But no, like meth can make the most well-adjusted person just devolve into a monster.
Yeah, it tends to have some noticeable effects.
It mentally and physically destroys you. Like it is, like, Breaking Bad told you it's poison. Like
there's fun drugs like LSD and marijuana and cocaine and heroin and then there's meth.
And then there's meth, and that's the drug when like the other shit just doesn't hit right anymore, and you're like okay with like Evel Knieveling your fucking life into like a flaming bus.
I mean, it really is the drug that you talk to a lot of people that are even hardcore drug users, and they're like, but I don't touch that fucking meth shit. Yeah. It's like, okay, you've got a line, and I respect that.
Yeah, it is. It's literally the Mr. Hyde shit, if you think about it. And the Mr. Hyde shit is my personal brand, sold in a back alley near you. So imagine somebody with like as many pent up, unresolved emotional issues as Cary diving into that shit, and tell me how this is supposed to end well for anyone. 10 years after Stephen's death, 42-year-old Carol Sund, her 15-year-old daughter Julie, and Julie's 16-year-old friend Silvina Peloso were on a road trip through Yosemite. And they were staying at the entrance to Yosemite National Park at the Cedar Lodge Motel. If you've never seen Yosemite, it's a really beautiful part of America. So it was probably overdue to have some maniac fucking ruin it. Because that's the American way.
Right. Just when you thought you were safe at Yosemite.
Just when you thought you could enjoy a fucking forest. Like... Somebody decided to fuck that up. The trio went missing. They were supposed to meet up with Carol's father at the end of their road trip, but there was no sign of him, no word, since they were at the Cedar Lodge. This started an exhaustive search, with a lot of people believing that Carol's car had slid off the road into the dense forests or canyons that make up the trip. Because this was a colder time of the year with slicker roads. I was actually watching a documentary about this. This is what made me want to, cover it. And they interviewed Carol's father, who was just traveling all up and down this fucking road trip, talking to anyone he could if they had been seen or if they can keep an eye out, put the word out. And while he was at the Cedar Lodge, he noted that a handyman at the lodge seemed to be keeping an eye on him from a distance. A wild Cary Stayner has appeared in our story.
Oh, I thought he was just like flirting. Like he's like, I was flattered, and I thought, man, if I wasn't so distraught right now, I'd take you up on that.
Who is that stocky ass old man? Want to get to know him. Eventually, Carol's burnt-out car was found. In the trunk were the burnt bodies of Carol and Silvina, which could only be identified by dental records. A coworker of Cary's was actually talking to him about this case. Obviously this horrific crime was the talk of the area. And the coworker...
Well, yes, especially if you work at the place that they were last seen alive. Like, that tends to be something that was probably a topic of conversation.
Totally, but I mean, we just had a murder near my town, but it was in Idaho, but it was like an hour drive, maybe, from where I live. And it was national news. Like, it was huge. Like, these types of crimes just pick up momentum. And the coworker mentioned to Cary how difficult it must be for the family to not know the fate of Julie, their granddaughter. Coincidentally, shortly after that conversation, the cops received a note with a hand-drawn map of the area with directions to Julie's body near a creek. And all the notes stated,
thought of that.
And all the note stated was, "We had fun with this one."
Oh, great. So, yeah, I take that. It sounded like he had a pang of consciousness, like, oh yeah, it must be terrible. I should probably. No, sounds like he's taunting.
Yeah, no. I mean, probably a little bit of both. Like, Cary is a weird dude. We'll get into it more, but like, you know, he at this point is he just a methed out handyman, or was there like actually a fucking monster underneath? I don't know why I'm talking about it as if it's not obvious. I've pretty much gave it away at the start of the story. I wouldn't be talking about him if he wasn't the fucking killer.
I honestly thought you were just going to say, I thought it would be just a small detail. I thought you were going to be like, yeah, well, turns out like Cary had
saved
tipped
more
off
people than Steven. No.
No, I was kind of thinking that like Cary maybe tipped off the guy to Steven because he was jealous of his brother, and it came out that like he's the one that got his brother singled out or something. But no, sounds like that would actually be a better character trait than what's actually.
So all the staff at the Cedar Lodge were questioned, but Cary was reportedly calm and cooperative, and he had no criminal history, so he wasn't a suspect at that time.
Look, I got nothing to hide. Can we just get out of here so I can shoot up again? I don't know. Did you shoot meth up? I forget. I don't know how you take meth.
You can do whatever you want once you're doing meth, man.
Meth brownies.
Yeah, whatever feels best to you.
You got edibles and you got methables.
There's not going to be like, hey, do it safe. Because if you're going to do it.
That's true.
In July of 1999, the body of 26-year-old naturalist Joey Armstrong was discovered near her cabin. She had been decapitated.
Cool.
This time, all signs pointed to Cary. Like, he didn't try to hide it at all.
He was wearing his I Heart Decapitating Naturalist t-shirt when he was picked up.
Kinda. He left his fucking hat there. So... And his
if found, returned to Cary at
his tire tracks from his truck matched it. I don't know if he just became more impulsive or like seemingly getting away with one murder made him think he'll get away with them all. But they tracked him at
I think a lot of it is that they just don't care if they get caught. You know, those kind of, it's not like he's in it for the long haul. He's just like you said, I think he was a monster, and then you add meth to the monster, and it's just like, I'm just going to kill. You know, it's just a thing I do.
Apparently the other thing he did was where they tracked him, where they found him at a nudist camp in Wilton, California. Nothing like getting hauled away for a murder charge with your dong flapping in the breeze.
All the other naked people, I can't believe it. He was always so naked. You know, not quiet or shy. It's just like he was just the most naked of the bunch. And
he always seemed really nice. Really petite, though. Cary shocked detectives by offering to confess to the crimes in exchange for child pornography, saying, "It's sick, disgusting, perverted. I know that. I can't go to prison for the rest of my life and be happy without seeing it." Because we wouldn't want him to be unhappy going to jail.
Right.
Fucking idiot. Police obviously refused, but Cary confessed anyway. It was like, well, worth a shot.
He's like, look, I'll level with you. I did this, but I'm not going to admit that I did this unless you let me see child porn. Fuck, you got me. You guys are good.
It's like haggling. Like, I want 20%. No. Deal. Like, it's like,
it was worth a shot.
Yeah, fuck.
Now I'm picturing that like Airheads thing. Was it Airhead? Where they had to come up with like crazy demands. The Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, and one of them was like, we need pictures of B. Arthur naked. Although that one's funny and child pornography is not.
No. If he had asked for B. Arthur naked, I would have laughed pretty hard.
Like, look, we'll bring her in. She'll do a strip show for you.
I was like, are you serious? We already have some. No.
Yeah, she's in the next room. It's a very common demand.
Yeah, people, it's weird. It's like every serial killer is like one ask. Cary claimed he had no intention of murdering Joey until he saw her alone outside her cabin, and then he could no longer resist the temptation.
I love that he's like, I wasn't going to murder her, and then I saw her, and I was like, I'm going to murder her. Like, I guess then you were going to
like, dude, like, I wonder, like, and with Cary specifically, like, do these guys know that they're, like, bullshitting themselves? Yeah. Like, they're always hunting, and they are always noting people who are vulnerable.
I had no plans on killing her until I decided I was going to kill her. It's like, well, then you planned.
That's killing her. Yeah, I was planning to kill her.
Yeah, I didn't plan on it until I saw her, and then once I knew who she was, I was going to.
You can't have a crime of passion from afar. Like you didn't.
Yeah, like it's a statement that is still fucked up as it is. Makes sense if you're like, oh, I had no premeditated plans of murdering her until she turned down my advances and I just lost it. But saying I had no plans on killing her until I saw her there, it's like, well,
until I thought I could kill this person. Like, yeah, it's so bizarre. Cary held Joey at gunpoint, bound her hands and mouth with duct tape, and forced her into his truck. While they were driving, Joey jumped out of the window of the truck to try to escape. But because, she was sort of bound up and
just jumped out of a moving truck.
And jumped out of a
that
fucking car, help. Yeah.
Right.
Cary chased her down and beheaded her. Cary then told the story of what happened to Carol, Julie, and Sylvina a few months prior. As a handyman at the motel, he told the trio there was some problem. There's kind of conflicting stories, but something like a broken bathroom fan or a leak in their room, something to gain access. He then strangled Carol with a length of rope, which he said took about 5 minutes. And then he sexually assaulted the two young girls. He then strangled Sylvina in the bathroom, and he put the bodies of Carol and Sylvina in the trunk. And then he forced Julie to ride with him as he searched for a place to dump the bodies. He drove to Lake Don Pedro and carried Julie to the creek. He assaulted Julie again, all the while saying shit like how he wished he could keep her and how he loved her. He then slit her throat and left her by a creek before returning to burn the car.
So that's good. Not only did he assault her twice and then slit her throat, but also forced her to watch the rest of her family get murdered over the course of 20 minutes. And then, that's cool.
So at some point in this, Julie didn't want to give him her real name, understandably. And she told him that her name was Sarah. And at some point, a couple days after the murder, he actually returned to the car and scratched the words, "We have Sarah," into the hood. Cary said he murdered these women.
The police were stumped. They're like, well, who the fuck is Sarah?
That would not for the reason he thinks, but it would throw people off. Like, there's no Sarah involved in
Imagine being the serial killer that killed Sarah in the area. You're like, oh, sweet. They're off my trail.
Or you're pissed because it's like, man, nobody was talking about that. What? That was my fucked up thing. Cary said he murdered these women just because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Again, I had no plans on murdering them until I thought, hey, I could probably murder them.
Yeah. One of the stories said he was actually the night he killed Carol and Julie and Sylvina. He was actually planning on killing his girlfriend and her kid, I guess.
She really lucked out.
Yeah, I guess they had people over or something, and he was like, "Fuck, I can't do it. Not with guests.
I can't try it tomorrow night either. I got to kill tonight. Tonight."
So he went back to the motel, and unfortunately, Carol and her family were the ones there. He said he had these fantasies since he was 7 and finally acted on them at this point. He said he would have kept killing until he was caught. He's so full of shit. Like, he claimed he never sexually assaulted them, which is easily disproven. And he wanted to keep their deaths, quote, as humane as possible.
So I strangled their mother in front of her over the course of 5 minutes.
I beheaded a woman, for her.
After holding her at gunpoint and biting her and getting her
I did it to keep her safe. Like, fucking, what are you talking about? Like, he's as sick as any serial killer we've talked about on this show, but he's so disconnected from what he did. And it's this weird, like, it's almost like even with everything going on, he's just trying to tell people what they want to hear in the moment. But it's like, that doesn't make you look more human, like, you're not empathetic, and you're
I've seen a lot of like killer, not necessarily serial killers, but even just like single murder, but they do that where they're just trying to say, it's like it's habitual, like, I'm going to say what you want to hear and that'll be better for me. And it's like, at the end of the day, you raped multiple women and killed them. Like, nothing you can say would make us be like, oh, well, okay. Like, we empathize with you.
Yeah.
It's,
So Cary was arrested and charged with 4 counts of murder. His defense obviously argued that he was mentally ill. While a doctor testified that he certainly suffered from mild autism, paraphilia, and OCD, these aren't an adequate mental illness defense. Because it's that technicality we've talked about before where it's like, yeah, Cary's definitely insane, but a legal insanity defense is more about, like, did you know like what you were doing?
Exactly, yeah.
And
he didn't understand their actions or understand that it was wrong, and he clearly, right.
Yeah. He was convicted on the 3 counts of murder for Carol's family. It was weird. The technical language was 3 counts of murder with special circumstances. And I don't know what that means. Like a clown.
It happened on a Tuesday.
Like a clown rode through the courtroom on a unicycle, and nobody saw that coming.
You got bozoed.
Yeah.
That's the no whammy. You got whammied.
There was an additional charge of kidnapping, and on August 27, 2002, he was sentenced to death. For the murder of Joey, he was given a life sentence separately from that. Cary broke down in tears during the sentencing for Joey's murder, stating, "I wish I could take it back, but I can't. I wish I could tell you why I did such a thing, but I don't even know myself. I'm so sorry. I wish there was a reason, but there isn't. It's senseless." Leslie Armstrong, Joey's mother, started crying as she listened to Cary and said afterwards that she believed his apology was genuine. I call bullshit.
Yeah.
And usually I'm pretty like, yeah, I bet there's like remorse that, like, no, because he's, like I said,
again,
moment
like
to moment,
he's
always trying to say the right thing.
And then at the end of the day, it's kind of what you said too. Like, even if he is genuine, to me, maybe I'm just a cold bastard. It still really doesn't change anything. You could be like, yeah, well, maybe, he's still in cold blood on 2 separate occasions, murdered multiple people. Like, you might not have meant to, but
it's just like these like impulses and shit. And it's probably, it's also an indictment of our culture a little bit that like people don't feel, empowered to go seek out mental health. But that is the differentiator to me of somebody who's like still has their humanity intact, and people like Cary, where it's like, you can say you're sorry all you want, but the time where you should have been, addressing this was before you killed people,
Right.
Like, now this doesn't help like anyone.
Yeah, right. And again, it comes across as you trying to save your own skin, or even if you're not trying to save your own skin, you're trying to control your narrative on yourself. It's more about you than about your victims.
Yeah.
Which,
it's
like you said, by now it's too late.
You're sorry once the crosshairs are on you, but that's
right.
How convenient. But like I said, the more I do these episodes and the more shit I watch, I'm probably becoming a bit more cold-hearted than is probably healthy. But
but it's tough because.
But it's just that
there's a lot of circumstances that go into
it.
Yeah, well, and nothing can bring. It's not like you can say whoopsie doodle and like undo what you did.
Yeah,
you've
not like Kenneth Parnell, who apparently after 5 years you're ready to make good. Fucking assholes.
Was there any resolution to his story? Like, I assume he's out now.
He got out.
Well, he's probably dead now, but
he got out, and I don't think anything else happened.
So he got away with it because I guarantee he didn't just become an upright citizen.
Probably. To this day, Cary remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison. However, due to a court ruling on capital punishment, apparently there's been no executions in California since 2006. But Cary...
They're saving him up for, when... the
we're giving you the super electric chair,
right? And we're gonna get these 150 convicts all at once.
This one will blast your ass to the moon, Cary. As soon as it's finished.
Science class experiment where you have the globe that one person puts their hands on and you all touch it, and anybody, if they break that chain, they're the ones that get shocked. It'll be like a reality show of that. It's just on like lethal levels.
Yeah. But Cary will never be eligible for parole. So
that's
fuck
good.
him. Yeah. Two Stayner bros. One a town hero, one a monster.
Well, and it's funny because it's like he's a town hero, and he does, like I said, there were some very strong character traits in there for him to do what he did, even though it's like, it seems like the logical, well, of course you're going to like save yourself. It's not that cut and dry. But it's weird to me too, the term hero, because I mean, it's not wrong, but it's like you're a hero for being abused for 7 years. Like,
well, it was like
he's a victim, but you can't really say the town. Yeah,
that's the element. I think that's like
certainly,
and like we talked
still
about,
feels weird, and it's probably what led to his. You said he had alcohol problems and stuff. Imagine being called a hero, but knowing that you went through.
Yeah.
Like, you would still feel like a victim. Like, they're like, you're a hero. It's like, no, I'm a victim. Like,
like I touched on it, but like, kids like bullied him and shit when he got back and stuff. Because kids can find a way to bully you about anything. Because they're assholes. But yeah, he dropped out of school because it was,
yeah, I mean,
it's
so
a huge
what should have
profile.
happened is Cary should have become a killer meth head that was like avenging his brother and going after these bullies, because anybody that's done anything shitty as a child should be punished for it forever, because I never did. I was a perfect kid. No, that's the crappy thing. Kids are shitty, but a part of it's because they don't really understand how shitty they're being because they're kids. But yeah, I mean, that had to be a tough spot even after the fact. How do you heal from that? And you don't, because a car fucking hits you and kills you and takes off. And it sounds like they never caught the guy that did that, or woman, I guess. Could have
no
been.
they did.
Good.
Or at least the stories I said, they identified him. It was Parnell. No.
No,
that would be fucked up. That would be a horrible
Timmy.
twist.
Timmy, I was gonna get some and you ruined it, you cock blocker. You ran him down.
That's fucked up. That's a fucked up joke for you. That's really dark.
Gotta lighten the mood. I mean, we went on to talk about a meth serial killer.
Yeah. I expect that from me.
No, I do hope that Timmy at least had a happy ending in his story, because I couldn't find anything else about him, but and by that I mean I didn't look. Well, and you probably wouldn't advertise that much. Be like, yeah, I'm the kid that almost got Well, probably did get something.
He is a part of the statue. Yeah. Like the statue's Stephen holding Timmy's hand.
Oh, it's better than him like standing atop Timmy with a flag.
Yeah, he has 1 foot on top of Timmy's head, like a Christopher Columbus fucking tribute. Like, look, Timmy, a police station. So yeah, that's the story this week, and that's the
always
thing
good,
this week.
Happy, warm fuzzies, the feels that we have after
another feel good hit to ring in the summer. So yeah,
see, that's the problem. You always get on me because I tend to like find these stories that have no resolution, be like, and they were never caught, or like they don't know who did it, or that kind of thing, and that's not, I get it. There's no like good resolution there. But then you find the stories where like, yeah, literally everybody suffered the worst fate imaginable. The end. It's like, yeah.
I mean, Timmy got off clean. I mean, you're like, yours drive me insane though, because it's like, if it's good or bad, like, how's it end? It's like, and yours is just like,
Yeah, 37 people turned up murdered between 1972 and 1973. They never caught the person, though.
Yeah, like, you'll have stories where it's like, and they spent 30 years trying to find them until suddenly they realize they can't. The end.
Yeah. I can't help it. I find stories that I find interesting, and then I get to the end, and it's like, well, fuck.
They're interesting, but that is the deviation of interest where it's like, I want to know. I want the serial killer story with the fucking British cop being like, "You're nicked" at the end, and
you know what?
You like unsolved mystery type shit.
I'll make a promise to you. From here on out, if I cover an unsolved mystery, I'll just Google and find a random person on Facebook and pin it on them.
Just make up to solve the mystery. I'm not going to double check you. Just say
I'd rather run the risk of being sued for like slander by picking a real person. And I'll even list their name and address for you vigilantes out there. No, but somebody getting dragged off by the cops, like, I've never even heard of this case. Like, that's what they would say if you were guilty. But yeah, no, fun story all around.
Yeah, we're fun people, and tune in next week when we'll be more fun than ever.
I'm not making any fucking promise. It's my turn next week. No, I'm making no promises of it being fun.
Nope, I'm getting meth and we'll have fun.
It's going to just be a review of the entire Rocky series. Like, welcome to the non-essential movie reviews.
Well, here's the review. You've watched 1 and 2. You're good.
Yeah, I actually haven't finished 2 yet because I keep getting interrupted. But
yeah, you're pretty much good. 3's all right. 4 is very funny.
Yeah, I've heard they kind of just fall off a cliff. Like,
5 is genuinely terrible, and yeah.
And then all the rebooty Creed stuff.
Creed's pretty good.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the second one, but.
And then I thought they were making it just rebooting Rocky. Like, I thought I heard that recently.
I don't know if they can do that. Because, one, it would be stupid because Creed is a reboot. Like, it is a Rocky story, like, for the new age. That's already what it's doing. And I'm pretty sure Sylvester Stallone owns Rocky, and he's kind of, like, folded his arms and, like, after Creed, he's like, I don't want any more Rocky shit. He doesn't even want to play Rocky anymore in the Creed movies, so... but that's another thing for not this show, and I need to go eat. So we'll be back next week, not talking about Rocky. I will tranquilize Steve if he starts talking about Rocky.
No, they're making a Drago spinoff, it sounds like, who I assume is from 3 or 4.
He's from 4,
anyway.
Yeah. All right. So, see you next week.
Later.
Fuck.